Hello, everyone. This is the Facts on JW. Today, I have a special guest. Her name is Sharon, and she's going to tell us her story of what led her to waking up. She grew up as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and then later she discovered it wasn't the truth. So, Sharon, let's hear from you. Tell us a little bit about your background in Jehovah's Witnesses and what led you to waking up.
Well, it all started with my grandmother on my dad's side, my dad's mother, and somewhere along her life, I think she gravitated towards, coming into the religion. Um, I don't know when, but the story has it that she was the one that brought it into our family. I don't think my dad was ever really in it. He was in World War II, so he had a whole nother experience in life when he was young. So it probably wasn't attractive to him, but it did affect my mother in a way that I felt like she wanted to go, or at least my grandmother wanted us girls to go. So in the family, there was 5 kids. I was the last. So my oldest sister was 15 years older than me. Then there was 2 brothers that were never really in it. Janet, the last, second to the last, and then me. So mainly I think it was the girls. I remember walking in the neighborhood to the Kingdom Hall, and it was just me, my sister, and my mom, usually. So yeah, the guys in the family weren't really into it.
And they were not required to go to the Kingdom Hall?
No.
Wow. Okay. And so then your mother did believe in this. Your dad was kind of a fence sitter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what his opinion was on it. I just know that my brother told me one time that he told my older brother that he goes, someday they're going to wake up and see they're not the only ones going to heaven or something like that, although the Jehovah's Witnesses don't even believe in that.
Yeah.
But he did. I think he saw through it just because he had so much experience in life of other things that were outside of it that was obvious that people were just normal people and everybody had rights to, live their life. And, being in World War II, you're going to be open to so many things that other people aren't going to be open to. So you see how the real world works.
Yes, that's true. And so you got baptized, right, as Jehovah's Witness. Did you fully believe at one time?
I did. I did. Well, I think in my family, the only thing that gave me comfort, because my mom became mentally ill when she was pregnant with me. There's a whole story to that we don't need to get into, but it was a issue between my mom and my dad that happened when she was pregnant with me. And she left to go back to Arkansas and then had to come back. So my whole life, I really was, as a child, even looking in the little books that we had, like if we had like a Jehovah's Witness Bible or the little Jehovah's Witnesses books. They didn't have a lot of pictures, but as a little kid, you want pictures. And I would just look through, and I was always searching because, she wasn't really present my whole life. So I was really searching for God in my own way, even as a little child.
Did you read the Bible, my book of Bible stories?
I did. I did.
The picture.
And I still remember some of those pictures. I remember the old Peach book that they had with the undulations on the top, with the little stories. It was an older one.
Uh-huh.
And I can't remember, Paradise Gained or something, or Returned. I can't remember, but it's one of the older ones.
Yeah.
And that was the only thing that gave me hope. Because I just really I wasn't parented much. My dad was gone all the time working, and my mom, and I just, I had my brothers and sisters around every once in a while. But yeah, it was a lonely environment. I didn't have much direction.
At what age did you get baptized?
15.
It's pretty common. I was 14. And so then I guess you continued to believe in it during that time. And then what led you to like realizing, this wasn't the truth?
I was very ministry minded when I was younger, and I was very serious about it, just like I am now. Everything I put my mind to, I'm very serious about it. Spirituality is my whole life now. But at the time, um, it mainly was when I met my husband, and he wasn't a Jehovah's Witness. So, of course, the elders at the time wanted to meet with me. And then, of course, I got disfellowship for that. And then I didn't really want to come back in, but I had to just to be around Janet and my older sister, Karine. So I did because I started seeing the discrepancies. It's one thing that I'm really good at is I can watch what's going on in the world more so now, but even when I was younger, and I would always see discrepancies. I would always see things that didn't line up, and I just started really noticing um, the the things that they were teaching were either some truths, half truths, and just out and out lies.
Yeah, that's how high control religious groups work. They will throw in some truth in there, mix it in with some lies. So it's hard to decipher the difference between the truth and the lie.
Yeah,
So about how old were you at this point when you started questioning?
I questioned all throughout. Like in my early 20s, I started questioning.
Okay.
I started a cleaning business when I was 19, and I just met all these beautiful people in the area where I lived, and they had families and beautiful lives. And I would just drive by and I'd look at these beautiful houses in Folsom, California or something like that. And I would look and I would say, all those people going to hell for celebrating Christmas. I always questioned it all,
Hmm.
you know. I just in the back of my mind I would just question it in my own mind, but I wouldn't talk about it too much. I just knew it just didn't add up.
Yeah. And is there anything in particular, maybe a particular doctrine, that made you decide that this wasn't the truth, other than like what you just mentioned about seeing people like, being destroyed in Armageddon because they were celebrating Christmas? Doesn't make sense, right? Was there any doctrines in particular that
Yeah,
about?
I was personally affected by the disfellowshipping doctrine.
Yes.
And I remember, when I was disfellowshipped, you still had to go to the meetings. And so I was going in the area where I lived in the Bay Area when I was married. And I remember just watching people, and I remember not feeling well, and I needed help with my baby. And nobody was helping me. And I remember sitting in the back, and they'd always say if they're crying, take them in the back room. And I was sitting there and tears were rolling down my eyes because they were talking about things. And I saw the, I just sat there and I said, this is not love, you know? And I just started seeing everything clearer and clearer. And I'm trying to think of the word. It's not dichotomies, but it's not discrepancies, but it's when something, you see something and then another action backs it up as the opposite, but the word's not coming to me. But anyway, um, yeah, I mean, that's what helped me wake up was just seeing. I
Mistreatment.
Ever since I was a child, I think in my environment, I developed a higher sense of emotional intelligence.
Hmm.
And so I think the emotional intelligence is what woke me up.
Yeah. And you saw how you were mistreated at being disfellowshipped, and a lot of that is one thing that can wake people up. Um, 1914 wakes people up, them joining the UN, but many times it is the fact their shunning policy. And how can they be considered a loving, uh, godly people that follow Jesus Christ when Christ said, you will know my people by their fruits, right? And so they're definitely very unloving when it comes to disfellowshipped ones. And so how can that be, a godly, loving way? So that's a good point. So that's one of the things that woke you up, huh? So did you ever get reinstated and then just fade away? Or what did you end up doing?
So when we were in the Bay Area, I wanted to move back to El Dorado County, and so I could be around my sisters, to raise my daughter with her cousins. Her youngest, she had four. Janet had four, and her youngest was only a year older than Audrey. And of course, they became really close. But point being is, I kind of had to get back up there. But what I found out when I did move back, I got reinstated so that I could move back. I stayed up with my oldest sister for a while when Audrey was around 1 year old. And I remember them letting me know that they were reinstating me, and I was excited. And then my sister told me, Janet Bryant, that she said, hey, just so you know, Rob's just fellowship now. That's when everything broke loose. Because I was like, wait a minute, I worked so hard to get back up here to be with my family, and what's happening now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that just threw you off because you thought,
Mm-hmm.
because Janet's a hardcore believer at the time, right?
Yeah.
Sister. And so then after her husband gets disfellowshipped, what did you end up doing? Did you continue going to the meetings?
Yeah. Yeah. I continued until my daughter was about 4.
Okay.
And the main reason was, part of it's the programming where you think you need to go, right? And then part of it, I just wanted to be close to my sisters. I wanted to be close to my family. I wanted to be a part of the family. And my sister was an amazing cook, so she loved to, on the weekends, have dinners and be there, and let the kids play together and everything and grow up together. So that was really important to me.
Yes. And your sister was still going to the meetings and still believing at this point?
Oh yeah, even Rob went.
Okay.
The thing is I think she was already questioning things.
Yeah.
But my sister had a hard time expressing herself. I was always the talker. I was the bubbly talking one, and I don't have problems expressing myself, but she kept a lot of things inside. Janet did.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then a few years go by. Rob never gets reinstated, correct? Or does he?
No, there's a story to that too.
Right. And then his wife also leaves as well, your sister, right?
Yeah, there comes to a point where they stop going, and I'll share that if you like me to. But can I share why Rob kept going, but
Yeah.
they didn't reinstate him?
Definitely. Please share.
You know why he was disfellowship? Is because he started partaking.
Oh, okay. Well,
Because my Nana professed to be one of the 144,000.
okay.
Because she had the gift of hearing too, but her whole beliefs were skewed.
Okay.
But he started partaking. And the Folsom Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall at that time, and the elders were like, well, if somebody was going to be one of the 144,000, it would be us. It wouldn't be Rob. It wouldn't be him.
Because he was younger? Is that why?
Because he was younger.
Okay.
But Rob was like me in the way that he took spirituality very seriously. He took things seriously. He was a Libra too, like me. In fact, Janet, when she first got together with him, I asked her what it was like being married, and she said it was just like being with a version of you. And I was like, "Aw, you're both Libras." But yeah, he took things very seriously, and what I think, this is just my opinion, what drew him away is his family members, his older brother Lance and his mom would come over and literally start proclaiming things over Rob, awful things that he must be doing because he's not in the religion anymore, in front of the kids. And they were very protective of what you talked about. They were very protective of their children. They wanted their children to remain completely innocent. They weren't allowed to, they didn't want them to listen to negative music or anything like that. My nieces and nephews were so pure. They were like four little angels. They were just pure souls,
Oh.
you know? And that was it. He didn't want no part of it no more. And Janet didn't either. In fact, if we were in town and my sister, we just happened to be go through a drive-through, and my oldest sister drove by, and she's like, she locked the things in the van. She told the kids, she's like, don't you wave, don't you open the windows. She did not want to talk to my older sister.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it got to that point.
And now, did you leave after because of your sister and seeing how they were treated?
Well, there were times, because me and Rob were more talkers. He was still somewhat shy, but I remember I needed to go to work at the time. I was still doing cleaning. I was cleaning these model homes, and my sister couldn't pick me up. So my brother-in-law came and got me. And I remember one time I just sat down in the truck. I said, Rob, what's going on? Why are you not going back? I just want to know. And Rob, he always had the Bible with him in the truck. He was reading all the time. And he would show me scriptures, and then he'd say, you decide for yourself. I can't decide for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I would ask him all these questions, and everything he was telling me made sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started really reading and studying more with a more open mind, and realizing he knew what he was talking about. And at that time I was already not going. So it just made more sense.
Hmm.
But he had a very calm, non-judgmental, meek way of explaining things. He was always that way. And, that's what made him an easy target. He wasn't judgmental. He would never say anything mean back. He wouldn't yell at them like they did him.
His family was pretty harsh, his parents. So
Yeah.
you ended up leaving after your sister. Did you get disfellowship too, or you just walked away and faded out?
I got disfellowshipped again after I did the news articles, and they passed and aired the story, of course. Yeah, right after losing my whole family, they had the nerve to come to my front door and tell me in my living room. And boy, let me tell you, this time, because I felt like after that happened, I felt like I got an extra portion of power from God. They were the ones backing up towards the door. They didn't even turn their heads. They backed up towards the door facing me, because God came through me, and just like I could feel it now. And I was just like telling them off. They're like, well, sister, because of this, we feel that you need to disfellowship. And I said, well, according to God, I've done nothing wrong. And I said, I got really powerful in the living room, and it was a vaulted ceiling. And I said, as your sister, I said, I would ask you not to disfellowship me. I said, because I've done nothing wrong but tell the truth. And the stronger my voice got, the more two of them, they backed up towards the door. Wow. And they kept their faces toward me because they got afraid.
Yeah, so the story actually is found on the ID channel Deadly Devotion, Witness to Murder, Shun No More. So if anyone wants to watch that, they can. But if you, so it was after this story aired about your sister and her husband and their children, that's when you got disfellowshipped.
Yeah, for the second time.
Just for telling the truth.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it was, if you want to tell maybe just briefly for people to go watch later, um, what was it that caused the tragedy with your family?
Well, it has to do with custody rights.
Mhm.
It has to do with grandparents being an integral part of children's life. And then Keith and Arlene Bryant were going for custody rights for Janet and Robert Bryant's kids, the 4 kids. And Rob was determined not for his children to ever step foot in the Kingdom Hall again, nor did he want them to be influenced by the very mother, father, and brothers and sister or brother going to in their home in front of the killed children and accusing them. Um, yeah,
I have a
it
question.
was
Why did the grandparents think they had any rights over their their grandchildren? I mean, how would they ever
well
in that case?
in California. If you have proof of being an integral part of their family, you can go for custody, not visitation rights.
Okay. Visitation rights, you say?
Hmm.
Okay. But they're the parents though. Janet and Rob were the parents. They could make those decisions or they're not allowed to in
Well,
California.
I just know that it's possible. Other grandparents have done it before.
But it's not custody, it's just visitation rights.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So he was fighting this. Okay.
Yeah, and that's why he researched all these different places to move.
Yeah. Move.
And yeah, and I remember talking to him on the phone, him and Janet, before this happened. And he said, yeah, I remember his last words before he gave the phone over to my sister. And he said, apparently we haven't moved far enough. McMinnville, Oregon. Um, so, yeah, so the way this happened was when they were first there, they camped out in their trailer in a trailer park just so that they could figure out where they were so that they could have a PO box and not have an address. So imagine them going from a beautiful big home on property to having to live 4 kids. And in the story, it's, even in the papers that were written, it does mention that Clayton was sleeping in the family van outside, Clayton, possibly Ethan. So, because they were all cramped in this little, I think it was an 18, 20-foot trailer, what, he pulled on his truck. And when the mail came, they had just gotten their double wide mobile home set up. Rob was out there that Christmas when we visited. Of course, we didn't celebrate Christmas because we didn't know what to do. He was out there on the tractor getting the land ready because that's what he did. He built houses and then he sold them along with his yard maintenance business. But anyway, so they had just been in the mobile home. They were really happy to have their own bedrooms. I remember the kids being excited and all that. And yeah, so we were there visiting during Christmas week when the school kids were off. The story goes after the investigation that when they interviewed the mailman put the mail in the box and he was still out there and they were talking when, just congenial with your neighbor type thing. And as Rob's looking through it, the mailman said that his face just went deadpan. I think he used the word deadpan dropped. And it was papers from his parents demanding custody rights.
That don't mean they'll get it though.
Or at least visitation rights. Well, if they were visiting and they were in another state,
Yeah.
they'd have to be there for a while, right? I mean, back and forth, however that works.
But they moved to
But
another state. Is that still give them did they still have to be tied to the California rules if they moved?
That's the thing is Rob was so thorough when he researched things that he knew that the laws in Oregon were not the same as California. But the other part of the story is we were all born in California. We were used to sunshine. We were used to the weather here. We were used to that. He went to Oregon. When we were there, I saw it play out. The rain's pelting in the winter. He's trying to get the land ready. And then there's this deep, dark sod soil that, here we had like El Dorado County, we had like this red clay soil, right? It's thick soil. And the tractor's falling into the dirt and it's just a contraption, right? And my sister and him were telling me that doing lawn service out there wasn't like it is here in California. So not only was he struggling with his businesses that he was trying to redevelop, it's just a series of blocks, falling for him to get to the point where he just finally snapped, and he was the main provider. Janet never worked the whole time they were married with 4 kids. I remember Janet was acting kind of like how my mom acted sometimes. And I knew Janet in order to, and I was that way too. What we did, me and Janet, to block out stress of what was going on is we would just start cleaning all the time. That's why I had a cleaning business. It just came natural to us. But I remember her sitting there cleaning out the refrigerator for like 2 hours, and Rob and Clayton are out there, and Clayton's skinny and tall, and he's starving, and he's crying, and he's like, Mom, I need to eat. And Rob's saying, Clayton, you need to come back over here. I can't run the tractor without you, kind of thing. And she's just scrubbing the fridge. And I'm watching this whole scene play out, and I'm like, what is going on? There's like a breakdown of communication here, right? She's checking out. And then I looked at her, I said, Janet, what do you need? What do we need for sandwiches? Oh, this, and this. And I said, are they in the cooler? Yeah. I go in the cooler, I start putting all this stuff together, and I'm running out there giving Clayton and Rob sandwiches. I'm bringing them drinks and everything. She's still cleaning the fridge.
Wow.
And I'm sitting here going, wow. But see, if you grew up with my mom and the way she would check out and the things that would go on, you would realize it was eerie for me. I mean, to other people watching, and then it may seem like, oh, what's going on, or kind of funny. No, something hit me deep. And I realized there's a family breakdown going on here, because this used to be a very loving, cohesive family, right? And I realized this all looking back as I would play the tapes through my mind of everything that went on and happened that built up to that point. But I realized I really do feel that not only Rob was breaking down mentally and emotionally, I feel like he saw characteristics of my sister similar to my mom, and it scared him. So it was the last time we were there, the Christmas week before. Yeah, it was eerie. It made me feel uncomfortable.
And you're now, when this happened, this was during when 9/11 hit the Twin Towers. Your sister started to wonder whether or not she should go back to Jehovah's Witnesses. Is that true?
No, I don't think she wondered whether we would go back. I remember her on the phone right after it happened, and we used to call each other Wubby. She was Wubby 1 and I was Wubby 2 because she was older, meaning chubbable and lovey. But anyway, point being is she's like, Wubby. She's like, what do you think? What do you think about all this? And I just told her what I thought at the time, and their fear is Armageddon's coming, because of what we were taught. Mm-hmm. And So if we could compile everything we were talking about financially, his business, and you bring up that good point, because I forgot about 9/11 until you mentioned that. And then all the family breakdown, and then 9/11. I mean,
Did
yeah,
did they believe that so they still had some beliefs tied to Jehovah's Witnesses, like, oh, this could be Armageddon coming? Did
yeah.
they still had a little bit of the beliefs still there?
Oh, definitely, because you until you replace your beliefs, I mean, that's just,
Yeah.
you know, reality. Until you replace those beliefs
Mhm.
and everything, you're still gonna, just like a child, you're gonna still believe what your parents taught you or your family taught you, kind of thing.
Yeah. You do. Yeah, I always say you have to deprogram yourself. You have to,
Yeah,
it's important because otherwise you could easily go back to it if a person is not fully deprogrammed. Something like
right.
that, like, the Twin Towers getting hit, that can scare you into going back in to the religion and getting reprogrammed all over again. So there was that potential there for your sister and her husband. They hadn't fully deprogrammed themselves, although they did mostly, it sounds like. But I guess, like you say, there was just so many things piling up, and then Rob just snapped one day, right?
He did. There was a deeper reason as to what Rob was researching and uncovering as an elder. He knew that women were raped, and it was being covered up, and then they were being disfellowshipped, because it happened to me
Yeah, and
when I was younger.
and
And
the scripture about if you don't scream, then
oh, yeah, yeah. Whenever you're raping somebody, you always bring two witnesses along, right? Yeah.
if you didn't
So
scream, that was the other.
yeah, he was fighting against far more than people know in the religion. He was holding them accountable. So it wasn't just his family. I forgot about that part, but if you only knew how much the headquarters in New York were after him, because he was writing back and forth to them, fighting over all the discrepancies of the things that were being covered up by the elders. My husband always questioned what had happened and why. So he saw everything. He said in the dream, he said, Rob took the boys out first so that they wouldn't fight him. He had it all planned out. He had two guns. Of course, that was in the police report. And they were all hunters, so he was used to this. And then the girls, and then Janet's leg got caught up in the bed sheets, and she couldn't run. She couldn't get away. And then he came up to her, so she was caught on the floor. He must have done it really quick, and put the gun to her head and said, "Janet, I love you, but this is the way it has to be." And my husband said, and she submitted. I thought that was odd. Put her head down, shot her. And then he said, Rob was in the living room for what seemed about 45 minutes, praying, it seemed like, down on his knees. I think one kneeled. And then he had everything set up. And then I think he just put the shotgun through his mouth, if I remember right.
It's like Rob he was trying to save his family, and that was all he knew to do at the time.
Yeah, and you know what's weird? When I did the other interviews in Oregon, we were at Burger King. My husband and my oldest brother Tim went with us, and my stepdaughters Samantha and Audrey. We were in there getting food at Burger King. Some guy recognized me, and he wanted to attack me
Oh,
for saying, "See how you and I understood that? Because we were in the religion. We know how crazy they can make you.
yeah.
But outside people don't get that. They think you're crazy.
Mm.
Like, how could you say that?" And he was yelling at me in the Burger King. So I went running out, and I got my older brother, and then my husband came. And my older brother, boy, he just, like, that's my baby, sis. He went right up there, and he was about ready to take him out. And the guy backed off, kind of just stopped. But See, people don't understand. If you're not in some kind of crazy cult that you fought so hard to leave, you wouldn't understand that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's, well, you happen to deal with hate from both sides.
Oh, yeah.
And then because you did the interview with the ID channel, that's when the elders wanted to disfellowship you, I guess.
No, I was just fellowship after it aired because
Yeah.
I did an interview at the house before we went to Oregon for the memorial.
Right.
And I did 2 interviews up there, I think. I think it was 2 on the news. And then the whole memorial was aired by the local news and CNN.
Wow.
It went all over the world. And there was an exjw named Dave Malone that contacted me after the story. And he said, Sharon, we're there. He goes, I monitor an exjw site. And he goes, I want you to know that people have been, that really touched me. I still have the envelope to this day in storage. All the people that were writing into Dave Malone all over the world in support for me.
Good. And I mean, it's tough to go through tragedy and also, your own disfellowshipping and dealing with, they just make things more difficult than they need to be. Jehovah's Witnesses, the elders and all
Yeah,
that.
well, they make it impossible because anything cultish like that is of evil.
Yeah.
So they're going to make it. I mean, it's just like if you're in the Illuminati or something like that, or you're in the music industry or the acting industry, and you're put into their cultish ways. I mean, you try to leave, you'll be pushed to either suicide, take you out, kind of thing. But
Yeah, I compare it, in high control groups to me reminds me of being part of a gang, and you're
it
in,
is.
and then you're accepted, so called, as long as you follow these rules. And then one day you want out, that's not an option without some sort of consequence. So, and that's what I think high control religious groups are like. Now, I know that there's some more harsh than others, Jehovah's Witnesses, theirs is shunning, which is pretty hard and devastating for a lot of people emotionally, and some of them can't handle it. They commit, or they just where they really struggle to move on. Um, and there's others out there, Jehovah's Witnesses are one of many, but uh, the fact that you wake up, then the thing is, you don't have the support group that you need when you're leaving this, because your so-called support was inside with the Jehovah's Witnesses. Now you've left that, and then you don't have that. Now you got to create new support group, and that can be challenging in itself, and it takes time. I also compare leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, and I just say the Jehovah's Witnesses because that's what I'm familiar with. It's like a grieving process because you have to let go of what you learned and deal with the fact that they lied to you, and it can be hard. So you go through the stages of grief, and then eventually you get to acceptance so that you can move on. So that's what I experienced personally. It was like a grieving process for me. And I was stuck in anger forever, but eventually I got to acceptance.
Oh yeah, well, there's lots of things to be angry at.
Yes, lots of it.
Yeah, and going through that cognitive dissonance process, I mean, it's almost like being in an abusive relationship with a narcissist.
Yeah.
When you get out and you go get counseling and you realize that you've been gaslighted and controlled all those years, there's going to be a lot of anger, and you have this cognitive dissonance to where, like, oh my God, that person didn't even love me all along. Oh my God, this was just a whole programming story being played out. It's like I always say it's like the worst scary movie, you know, being played out only into real life. It's like a horror movie.
Yeah, that's true.
In my instance, it was a true horror movie. Like you said, we did my ex and me did a lot of research on that, and I think it was Dave Malone and others that were helping me realize that there was quite a few suicides.
Mhm.
Oh, bizarro. 6 months later, in the Tillamook Forest, the story aired, and they contacted me after that and wanted to know if there was any correlations that a man was disfellowshipped, only his story was totally different. He wasn't an honorable person in his life. I think he was like being gone after for writing bounce checks and stuff like that. But anyway, he had children. I can't remember how many.
I know who you're
But
talking about.
yeah, he took his wife and children out in the Tillamook Forest, but he didn't. I think he wanted to kill himself, but then he changed his mind or something.
About Christopher Longo.
Yeah.
I actually did a whole little video on him and in on my channel. So, but he did not kill himself. He was too narcissistic. He was just
Yeah.
he's actually in prison right now. And he just felt like they were a financial burden to him. And so he just decided it was easier for him
Oh,
financially
how nice.
to
Okay. Yeah.
eliminate them. But he had actually he wasn't actively going. He wasn't an active member. His wife was. Like he had quit and then she was still believing. So, but either way, very narcissistic person, extreme.
Yeah. Total different
Yeah.
scenario. I remember them asking me questions and they kept saying if there was a correlation. So I was like, no, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, no, it was very different. He was just very narcissistic. But I think we can see how they are manipulative. The Jehovah's Witness organization, Watchtower, whatever you want to call it, they're manipulative. And then once you realize maybe you've been lied to through their doctrines, through the way they mistreat people, and then you have to go through the deprogramming process, right? So you were able to deprogram. You these things happened. You saw how you were mistreated, how your family was mistreated. And then I guess that's what led you to leaving and saying, I'm not going back, I guess, right?
Well, an integral part of my deprogramming was Kathy. The lady, there was a wonderful lady contacted me when the story aired in Oregon, and she was living in Albany at the time. And she really asked the media, the people that were interviewing or whoever was connected, please, give Sharon my number. And they did. They said, it's totally up to you because you have complete rights and privacy, doing this. And I said, no, I want her number. I called her. We became good friends and talked for hours. But what she did is she said, you know what you need? You need Ray Franz's big book, Crisis of Conscience. No kidding.
I have that book too.
And, yeah. And I studied that book and read that book. And let me tell you, it just quickened the whole awakening process. Because one thing about me when I was younger, Rob, the same way, we were students of all the books that we studied as Jehovah's Witnesses and the Jehovah's Witness Bible. And so I knew scriptures and things backwards and forwards. And, I had my spiritual awakening right after I was crying and, before we went to Oregon. And I prayed to God and I said, God, what do I do? And I literally heard, free my people. And I said, no, God, you're not quoting Moses to me in the house before we left to Oregon. And I heard free my people. And I was like, okay. So I knew that I was going to have to go up there and air the story and really do all this. Now, did I ever think that they were going to come to me and it was going to be put on ID Network? Because I always wanted to write a book, but this was way better than a book. This, you can't, I mean, the fact that we have internet nowadays and that story is still aired 10 years later and people can see it all over the world. Now you can't compare that to a book. Jehovah's Witness ladies that knew Rob, they grew up together in southern Sacramento, Lemon Hill area, Lemon Hill congregation. They knew my Nana too. They came up to the house and they, after that, that aired and things was settled down a few months, and they asked if we could sit down, and we sat on the front porch and they prayed over me, and I'll never forget. It was like somebody took me in the Mojave Desert and then just put me into, Alaska. The feeling of how that all happened. And I just knew that what I was meant to do with this story, I'm of the belief that when things like that happen, it's for a higher reason. I went on this spiritual journey where I started going to meditation classes. I started going into the metaphysical. I started realizing that I was gifted all along. I just didn't realize it. I'm kind of a story of somebody who was really shut down and then just totally went the other metaphysical realm. I realized that, I can hear from God, I can hear from anything, and that I'm a medium. I really do feel that I still have a lot of work to do in the process of helping people wake up.
Yeah, that's great. Now, what would you suggest to someone who is currently maybe questioning their beliefs, or maybe they haven't fully deconstructed their beliefs as a Jehovah's?
I would recommend, I'll just share a little meditation that I did last night. There's NLP, there's neuro linguistic programming, where we have repetitive negative thoughts in our mind. And then I always say cancel, cancel, clear, and then I replace it with a positive thought. And the way I started it, where I just sat, I laid in my bed and I said, I forgive myself, I forgive all others. I forgive myself and I forgive all others. I love myself and I love all others. And I just continually repeated that for a long time. And then I went in to do the healing work. In the Christian community, they call it, generational curses. Some people in the spiritual community don't like calling it that. But whatever feels comfortable when you're leaving is the most important thing. If you don't want to use the word Jehovah anymore, I didn't want to use that word. I just wanted to say God. I didn't want to use that word ever again, And whatever you feel that you need to do, be your own parent, comfort yourself. You can hold yourself. You could say, I love you. I mean, all the things that we weren't allowed to do, we were taught as Jehovah's Witness that we had to sacrifice ourselves and, put others first. Loving yourself, it was not even a concept. But the most healing thing you can do, I think, is to begin to learn how to love yourself. Go online, do research, go on your phone, look up on Instagram or whatever you look at. Look up videos of just groups or people that just talk or teach about loving yourself, And the most powerful thing I've been doing in the last couple of years, I call it radical self-love. I have been really focusing on just loving me. And that's powerful.
That's very important. I think great advice, because you aren't taught to love yourself when you're in a high control religious group. It's always about pleasing the organization, right?
Exactly.
So, not about
Look
you.
up to the elders, treat them like gods. Oh, please.
Yeah, I know. And then like it's so the if the governing body has decided, they like to use that word now. The governing body has decided, as if it's the word of God, and the organization is supposed to be seen as Jehovah God, the Almighty God. And it's just not true, we can't be looking at it that way. Loving yourself is very important. Yeah.
No, and on that note, I've delved into the history of gods, the Bible, Babylonia, all the things that we were taught. I mean, some of it was true. Some things about the Jehovah's Witnesses and Babylonia and the
Yeah.
Catholic Church and everything. Some of that was true, actually. They never wanted us to go to college. They never wanted us to educate ourselves outside of that organization because God forbid that we would become wise and we would realize it's all a farce, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I after reading Ray France's, Crisis of Conscious, I developed this thought in my mind, like, I'm not gonna let anybody tell me what to do, and as sure as hell ain't gonna be a man. And I'm not kidding. I just decided that I was going to research anything and everything that I could about history of religion or the origin of all of us. And still to this day, I'm still researching things. And I don't let anybody tell me what I can and can't believe. I look at it like this. And this is another way to awaken too. When you do research, you don't have to believe anything. You can just look at a thought or a concept or a philosophical understanding. And until it resonates with you, I like to use the word resonates. You can just put it on the back burner and say, I'll think about that later. All of these amazing minds in the Greek history, how do you think they came up with all these great, amazing things? You think they didn't channel? Like, you look at the Sistine Chapel. How did that man think to do that? But you think he didn't channel that inspiration? Or, great philosophers that knew all these profound things? Like, you think they didn't channel that? We all channel it. What if you're sitting there creating music? People always say, "Oh, I channeled that." We all have that ability. When we're waking up, we can think like this. Okay, we do realize they lied about things, and one of the most profound things, and I channeled this one time, like, God, I was like, what would you call the Jehovah's Witness religion or any high control groups that don't believe that we go to heaven or we have a spirit outside of our body? And I heard the religion channeled this would be the death of the soul. This religion is the death of the soul. Because even Mormonism, from what I understand, believes that there's a heaven, and they believe in angels, and they believe that you go.
They believe in eternal spirit. Seventh-day Adventists do not. They believe in yeah.
Okay.
Which
No, I believe that is the death of the soul.
Yeah. Well,
that cuts off your communication, your connection with God.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to interrupt you, but
no,
do you see how strong I feel about these things?
Well, they do. Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in an eternal soul or spirit. They believe you are a soul and that soul dies, so there is no spiritual connection with God in that sense. And same goes for Seventh-day Adventists. They believe in soul sleep, which Jehovah's Witnesses come from that religion.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. My friend got me to go over to the Seventh-day Adventist church in Placerville one time. And all I did was to go to observe.
Yeah.
And I just watched all this and I was like, ooh. But it's got that eerie feeling again. I was just like, ew.
Well, a lot of sort of, I don't know if everything cult-like, but a lot of cultish religions did stem from Seventh-day Adventists. And And they were doing numerology back in the day, Seventh-day Adventists. They were false prophesying the end times. And Jehovah's Witnesses have done that for a long time too. They don't currently, they're always talking about the end is near, the end is near. But before, they had quite a few dates that were saying this is the date that the end will happen, like 1914, and then they changed it to a different meaning. That's the meaning today, which is the overlapping generation of 1914. And then they went to 1925, millions now living will never die, and then 1975, stay alive till 75. And so they had these false um, dates, and Seventh-day Adventists and the Millerites and all that. It all stemmed from this guy named William Miller. So there's a old history that Jehovah's Witnesses don't know their history. They don't know where they stemmed from. Although, yes, they have changed it up a little bit, but they stem from similar ways as William Miller, who was just basically predicting having fake dates on when the end was coming.
Hey, Casey, I got a prophetic message for you.
Sure.
Ha ha ha. Now that everybody's waking up,
Yeah.
my prophetic message is the end is near for Jehovah's Witnesses. That's my prophetic message. You know why? Because people are waking up.
Yeah.
I mean, from COVID, from all the things that are happening, from the dark side of things that are still trying to control us, we are waking up. A year when things are coming out, with what's happening with, the dark side of things from certain island and things like that. Part of it came out, more's coming out, things are being revealed. I mean, the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, Weinstein, all that. I mean, things are being unearthed. Okay. This is our year. 2026 is the year of revelation or apocalypse. And you know what all that means? It's just the great revealing.
Yeah.
So what Rob thought was the end, he shut down and broke down, and his hope of life ended. And let me tell you, there's many times I've struggled, but I was completely opened up by realizing that I am a gifted being, and that those people tried to keep me shut down, and I will never allow that again. Never. I've become more powerful now, especially as I've gotten older, went through menopause and everything, than I ever have been. I'm more bold, and it made me a bit rebellious, but I was glad that I was,
Yeah, definitely.
We have the right to research and study and open up to anything that we want to.
Right. Yes. And that's the thing. Information control is one of the things that high control religious groups do, is control information. And you should not be told that you can't research something, but that's one of their forms of control. So we do have to remember to go and research anything and everything. That's how we learn.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story today and giving some advice on anyone who is questioning their beliefs right now, our current Jehovah's Witnesses, or if they're in some sort of high control religious group, to remember to question things and use your critical thinking skills. That's what we always say. Use your critical thinking skills. Don't be told what to say, do, and think. You have to discover that for yourself.
Yes. And just remember self-love.
Exactly.
The most powerful thing that will heal you is loving yourself.
Absolutely.
Even if it's hard, go in the mirror, look in the mirror and say, I love you. And it may be hard at first. Just keep working at it until you can look in that mirror and learn to truly love yourself and realize what beautiful beings each one of us are, and that we are powerful, sovereign beings. And nobody can take away that sovereignty unless we allow them to, and just don't allow it.
Exactly. Very good. Well, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for contacting me, Casey. I feel so privileged and honored. You have no idea.
Oh, well, no, I'm very grateful for you being willing to come on today too.
Thank you so much.